what I'm going to talk to you about, I assume everyone can hear me, and I've got the chat going, so if my audio goes out or if my screen isn't being shared, just flag it and I'll see it and be able to stop. So what I want to talk a little bit about is Quizlet, and then afterwards, in perhaps a less interesting manner, how I use discussion board. So Quizlet, before I share the screen, actually, no, before I share the screen. So Quizlet is a Web 2.0 resource that allows you to create online quizzes that can be used, as a self-assessment model to reinforce critical terminology, central ideas, etc. That's in a less stress-free environment, and this kind of builds off, Mary, what you just said about having all these quizzes in your grade book. You can export them off of Blackboard, so it's not quite as onerous. Now, the version I'm going to show you that I use is the free version. So I don't know, and the answer is probably no, but I don't know if you can integrate Quizlet with Blackboard so that students could do quizzes on Quizlet and the grade appear on Blackboard. If you get the paid version, perhaps, but it's probably not likely. I don't know anything about the paid version and the kinds of things it offers, but certainly that would be something to investigate. Okay, so now we're going to try the screen share. This is my science fiction course. This is a degree level course, and as a result, I have a lot of critical terminology that relates obviously to the critical theory that I use to help unpack the students unpack the narratives, as well as very specific SF terminology that I need and want the students to learn as part of this degree offering. So this is where Quizlet comes into play, because it creates this environment where the students can self-assess to see if they actually understand the terminology, and it's not a quiz. Now, if anybody asks, yes, there are quizzes in this course that will test them on the terminology, and the students know that. So I really reinforce, if you want to nail down this stuff before we get to the quiz, use the Quizlet in this sort of safe environment. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like at the end of the process, and then I'll show you the process to build So I'm going to operate in reverse, basically. So I'm just going to scroll down to this module here, the critical approaches to science fiction, which is currently live on, it's not showing live right now in terms of, the students and whatnot, but the students are accessing it. This is the first module for this week. And so what I do is I pop the Quizlet down here at the end. And I'll show you a different way of doing it in a minute. And I provide a link, right? So there's a link there as well as a link there, just so they know what they're doing. So after having reviewed the material, which is in this subfolder here, which has the terminology they're expected to have learned for this session, this is where they go and self-assess. So I'll give it a quick click. So this is the default that Quizlet offers. Now, because I'm using the free version, you get ads, right? And sometimes you see Seneca ads, actually. And so it's kind of like Facebook. So you kind of have to mentally filter that stuff out. Obviously, you have the paid version. I do know that the ads will disappear. So the information, this is stuff I created, and again, I'll show you after how I created it, but this is the information that I want the students to remember in terms of the critical theory, the critical terminology. And I'll come back to this in a minute, but as I say, the default is the flashcards. So, science fiction, what is the definition of science fiction? According to Darko Suvin, you click on the flashcard and it flips around, and there it is there. All right. The number down here shows your 6 flashcards. So in the next one, science broadly defined. Again, this is all in the learning module. Click on the flashcard. There it is there. And I'll just go through science narrowly defined. There it is there. Estrangement and novum. And then I think that's going to be it. Yeah. Okay. So I'll cancel that. So that's a flashcard method, very straightforward for students to sort of reinforce. If they want to be more active and more challenging, you can use some of the other options over here. So the learn option, for example, it's the quiz idea, and you're scored, and you're done when you can answer each term twice, right? So I'll run it through quickly, and hopefully I don't give any wrong answers. Okay, so science fiction is a way of writing about things, events, and people, rather than a description of which things, events, and people should be written about. What did I say that was? Did I say it's a mode? Yes, yeah, I'm correct, right on. So a representation that is one which allows us to recognize its subject, but at the same time makes it seem unfamiliar. That's from a piece that's in the learning module. That is estrangement. Got it correct. Nice. All ways of generating rigorous knowledge about the material world. These are all quotes. You see, I got the quotation marks. I think that's science narrowly defined. Oh, I got that wrong. Whoops. And I'm the one who created the quiz. Anyway, well, you get the idea, right? So I just want to show you what's on the next screen here. This is science broadly defined. Okay, what am I doing? Okay, I got to read this without the pressure of you all watching this. This is science fiction. Conan Darko Suvin. Great, I got that one right. This is Novum. Wonderful. This is science broadly defined. No, I still get that one wrong. What am I? Right. So that's narrowly defined. Okay. Helps if you read it.
Doing that on purpose, aren't you? Because you're showing us what happens.
I'm showing you what happens when you get it wrong, just so you can experience the whole thing. All right. Well, I'm doing my best. That's fantastic. So now I'm into the second phase, right? Because what's that?
When you get it wrong, it pops up the hint for you and gives you the correction, which I think is really cool.
Yes. So now in this, I have to type the answer, right? So it's not just recognition or guessing. It's you actually have to get it right. Gosh, I hope that's it. I'm not really reading the question. No, I'm not. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, you get the idea, right? All right. So that's the learn. That's the learn option. You can also do I'm not going to do it for all of them. You can do the right option, which is kind of what you just saw earlier. You have to type the answer, and it shows you remaining incorrect or correct, just so the students know, like, when's this ever going to end? The spell option, which is nice because I'm going to shut up. Hopefully you can hear this. Could you hear that, Mary?
No.
No. Okay. Here, I'll see if I make the volume as loud as I can.
No, sir.
Well, if you can't hear it, basically it's giving you what the answer is, and here's the definition, and you're supposed to type what you hear. So in this case, it was Novum.
Oh, cool.
Right. So science. So it's again another way of reinforcing.
That would be awesome for second language learners too, because they hear it, they see the definition, and they have to type it out.
Correct. There we go. So yay, 6 out of 6. Okay, wonderful. And then the other option is the test option, which is probably what you'd see in a Blackboard quiz, right? So type in the answer, matching questions, multiple choice questions, true, false questions, etc. And then you click the check answers, and it'll tell you how you did. All right. So those are those. Now these are games which students can play, obviously. And I'm not sure if you can do it with the free version, but apparently there's ways that the students can challenge one another. I'm not sure how that works, so don't ask me. But certainly, if you get the paid version, I think is how that implements. And then you can certainly have contests amongst your students. So the match, you get all the terms, and then you have to put them on top of each other while you've got this timer going. Right, so now they're all tiled, right? So I have to, okay, this is Novum. Where's Novum on the screen? Here it is. So, oops. I don't know if I did it right. Science fiction. No, I didn't do it right. Okay, narrowly defined. That goes. So there, see they're disappearing now? Novum goes there. Science fiction, I can't see where the definition is. There it is. It goes there. Rigorous, this is probably not right. It is right. Estrangement, no, that's there, and that's going to go there. Well, I did in 46.87. Woo, I got first place. Fantastic. And there's the challenge of friend, but again, I'm not entirely sure how that works. So, and then the students can do it again. Oh, it's already going again. Can you best your own time? Right. So there's that option, which at least makes it perhaps a bit more, enjoyable, to that degree. And then the final one is, and now admittedly, this is one that I don't actually use because the definitions are too complex. But it's so you're down here. You got to prevent the asteroids from hitting the Earth. So this is the definition, and you're supposed to type it in here. Now, you saw from my examples, there's no way a student could do this in my class unless they have it right in front of them and can do it word for word. So the idea here is you obviously want to prevent the asteroids from colliding. You can certainly do this if it was like one-word definitions, then that would be more, oh, there we go. See, I didn't do it, and now it gives it to me. So you could certainly do it in that fashion if you had more simplistic kind of definitions. But again, you can get the students to prevent the asteroids from hitting what looks like a Martian planet over there. So those are the options for this particular example anyway. Now I'll show you how I constructed it just to show how easy this actually is. I'm going to create a new set. So this is a brand new quiz. And let's call it, for the sake of simplicity, Superhero Secret Identities. Because people who know me know I'm a total comic geek. All right, wonderful. Superhero Secret Identities. And this is basically how easy it works. You type in your term, Superman, you type in your answer. Clark. Oh, look, they even have it pre-done from other quizzes that other people have done. Say cool. Spider. Yeah, so it will link up. I mean, it won't link, but it will snag other quizzes for other answers so that you can maybe shorten the process. But you don't have to, you don't have to take that answer. You can just override it and write your own. So, Peter Parker, wonderful. Let's do a third one. Oops. Let's say She-Hulk. I know you're going, who? She's coming to Marvel Plus. She's coming to Marvel Plus next year. Linda Danvers. No, wait, that's not right. That's Linda Walters. Sorry about that. Captain Marvel is and Linda Danvers.
Images too. I
yeah,
love
you can pop images in there. Yeah, you can pop images in there. So if it's like a biology course or a nursing course of some sort, some sort of, I'm not a biologist, but some sort of biology organ part, and then they have to type in what the organ part is, which is nice. And then let me just do one more, Batman. All right, Bruce Wayne. All right. If you need more cards, there he is there. If you need more slides, just hit add card, and you can just keep adding more and more cards as you go. All right. Otherwise, you might decide I've got too many cards, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop there. Here is the list I have, a 5 for the sake of this video. You hit the create button. And I'm done. Whoops. There's the ad, right? Get the pay. I'll come back to that in a second. Superman, Clark Kent. All right, next one. Spider-Man, Peter Parker. She-Hulk, Linda Walters, Captain Marvel, Linda Danvers, Batman, Bruce Wayne. Wonderful. And then here it is all what I showed you before. There's the learn with the quiz, right? Who's Peter Parker? He's Spider-Man. Right, who's Clark Kent, Superman, etc. So I won't do it all again. So you've seen it. This is where the Martian planet thing might work quite nicely, which I actually haven't tried. This will be a first. So how do we do? Watch out for the red asteroids. All right, so here comes my asteroid. I'm going to hit my Earth. That is Linda Danvers. Carol Danvers. I get her and She-Hulk confused, apparently. Uh-oh. Wonderful. Press escape to... Oh. Okay, well, anyway, you get the idea. Okay. So that's how easy it is to make a set, basically. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. You can organize your sets. You'll see, for example, that I have sets kind of all over the place. Some of them are old, so I defuncted them. And in this case, you can create folders. So for your own sake, you can keep track of what it is you're trying to do, so it's not all getting confused and messed up. So once you've created your quiz, your set, whatever you want to call it, you can then import the link into Blackboard. So students just have to do it with one click, as I just showed you earlier. And that's pretty straightforward. You choose the share button, for example. Here is the web link. So I'll just copy the link. I'll go back to my example. Now, I did set this up yesterday, so I would be somewhat prepared. There's my Forbidden Planet. And so here's my page. There's no link yet, so I'll just pop it up. I'll highlight link here and throw in the link. Voila, I'll say Quizlet Superhero Identities. I have no idea if that's spelled correctly or not. It's not. Identities. There we go. Insert. Whatever. And there we go. So there's the link there. But what I often do as well is I'll drop it into the actual page as well. All right, I'm gonna just doing it twice. It's no, I'll just call it Snowpiercer just to save time. And then I'll insert the link. So there it is there. And then I press upload or submit. So now at the end of this module, they have the Quizlet, which will test them on this particular content. Now you can also, if you want, you can embed it. And to do that, instead of using the copy link option, you go to the little three buttons here, go to embed, you copy that HTML code, go back to your Blackboard site, click on HTML right there, drop in the embed site, hit update, hit submit, and now if you don't want them leaving Blackboard, Quizlet's right there. It's a little bit different. It doesn't, for some reason, and imagine there is a way of doing it, I just don't know what it is. It doesn't default to flashcards to start. It does the match game, but the students can change it, choose a study mode, so they can change it to flashcards to start off and there. So it's basically what I just showed you earlier, but it's actually embedded right into Blackboard if you want to go that route. It's entirely up to you. So I think that was it. Oh, and the students do have to have an account on Quizlet. Again, it's free. So that is one of the limitations, is they will have to have the account. But again, it's because it's a sort of a voluntary self-assessment thing, you don't have to make it mandatory. So if students don't want to do the Quizlet option, they don't necessarily have to do it. But on the other hand, it certainly, I think it helps anyway. I mean, students haven't complained about it, and just an added resource which you can use. That's
Brandon,
about it for Quizlet.
Can you tell
Yeah,
who has or hasn't done it, or is it just sits as a self-assessment?
Yeah, it just sits as a self-assessment. I mean, you could always do tracking, right, on Blackboard, but unless the paid version has the ability for you to track who uses it, which I imagine it probably does, because if you can challenge other people, then there must be a way of tracking who's on it. But I don't know for sure, and I'll admit I'm a little hesitant about, we're surveyed as it is in so many different ways. I'm not sure tracking yet another device for tracking students is perhaps maybe not something we want to necessarily advocate. And you can also access it. Yeah, I mean, you can also access it through. I mean, as I say, I set up my own account quite a while ago. I've been using this off and on for about 5 or 6 years. But you can also access it through Google. It also has a Facebook option to access it through Facebook. I probably wouldn't be advocating that approach, because heaven knows we don't need Facebook following more of our daily doings. But certainly, I guess because it's connected to Google, maybe Google has a financial stake in it. But I just used my Seneca email, created a password, and voila, I was off to the races. So pretty easy in that regard. Any other questions or comments that I can try and avoid?
Oh, Levon John asked, your stuff, because it's free and using the free version, in theory, is your question set open to the public? Like someone else could use it, or just the questions and answers? Do you know?
I mean, you'd have to have the URL, right? Because you have to share the URL with the students. I haven't figured out or discovered or learned if it's searchable, through like a Google searching kind of thing. So I'm going to say it's probably porous. It's probably not completely open, but I imagine if someone has sufficient skills, they may be able to track it down. But you have to have an account on Quizlet to access it in the first place. So there's a certain amount of quarantine around it, but it's probably not 100%, divorced from people who are looking for it.
Yeah. I'd say that's fine. I'm thinking too, when someone asks that, I'm thinking of my Kahoots, which, because I have a free account, are all public. And in theory, if someone wanted to go in and give my PSY 222 review for some other purpose, they can, because it's public. And I don't consider that a big deal. but maybe it's just
Yeah.
something to keep on the periphery, that you're not totally private with your questions and answers.
Yeah, there is a search button there. So to be honest, I haven't gone searching for other stuff, but I don't want to try it out right now. But I suspect if you're within the Quizlet environment, it probably is searchable.
Yeah.
But as you say, Mary, there's no real privacy problem with, at least as I see it, with wherever my superhero quiz went. It's not like I'm too worried about people discovering, hey, Superman is Clark Kent. What the heck?
All right.
Any other questions before I can move on?
I think you can.
No? Okay. Okay, so discussion board is less flashy, I'll admit. And I've been using it for quite a while, and I know it's like old school, right? Like it's back in the 20th century. So I don't have a lot to say about discussion board, but I will show you how I organize it just to give you a sense. So here's my course, right? And here's on the left-hand side. So we all have discussion boards, so this is nothing perhaps majorly new. But if you're not used to using discussion board, then this hopefully will be used to you. I always have a student introductions section, right? So to create a forum, you just click the create a forum button. So I always have a student introduction section. This is where students basically tell me a little bit about themselves. Now, I'm not going to go into it because that would be a privacy issue. But currently you can see that there's 6 unread posts. Oh, and someone replied to my post. So I always go through the student introductions and read them, obviously, and then provide a reply that clearly is not like a bot reply, right? Clearly reply that shows I read it. So I try and snag on something in their posting that can somehow be, indicative that I'm reading the content. And then I reply accordingly. Welcome to the course. Hope you have a great time. Oh, I didn't know. For example, in one of the other courses, a couple of the students mentioned how much they enjoy hiking. Well, in the novel that we're doing, the main character who lives in this dystopian oppressive society goes hiking. And while she's hiking, she discovers things about how the world is really working. So I make that connection. Oh, if you really like hiking, you'll probably really like Cassia in Match that we're doing later this semester, because she's going to discover all these wonderful things while hiking in the hidden hills. So just to show that, I am engaging with the student. And then I might pose a question back to them. So they might say, wow, I really like science fiction movies. I'll say, okay, well, what are some of your favorite movies? And so it's an informal way of at least getting to know the students beyond simply a student number. Not everybody will take advantage of the student introductions. I'd say I probably get about a 60% return because some students just don't care, right? They just want to do the give me the course. I don't want to get to know people, and that's perfectly fine. It's not like it's graded or whatnot. So I also have a frequently asked questions section, and then it pretty much is self-explanatory what the purpose is. But I do note it's a public forum, like public for Blackboard, obviously, or the people in the course. So don't post private questions like, why to get an F on this assignment, and don't post your student number. I get almost no replies to this. Students typically email you, the questions that they have. Some low maintenance type of thing because almost nobody ever uses it. But I put it up there because it's useful. Okay, so here is the discussion board. Now, for the course, I have 2 discussion boards. The total component for the discussion board is 15%. I've made the first discussion board mandatory, and then the second discussion board is optional. And what that means is, what mandatory and optional mean, but in terms of the grading, how that plays out is if the student, everybody does the mandatory one, and what they get on their response, and I'll show you my rubric in a second, but what they get in terms of their grade from me is the 15%, which is the course value for this component. However, if they want to try and adjust their grade, they have the option of doing the second discussion board, which is later in the course. If they don't do the second optional, then their grade for the discussion board is the entirety, 15% is this one. If they do the optional, as I explained in the syllabus and in the instructions, it's the average of the 2. It's not the best of, but the average. So they can then choose to, they make the choice for themselves based on all different kinds of factors, with the realization that if they tank discussion board number 2 and they did really well on discussion board number 1, their grade will lower. Alternately, their grade could go up. And in most cases, the grade goes up because the students now have experience with it, and it works out accordingly. So anyway, so I have the instructions just there. Now, this is not the full breadth of the instructions, because if you try and put all your instructions in the thread that you've created, right? Here, I'll just do create form. If you try and put all the instructions in this box, it's going to go on forever on your screen. It'll just keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling, and students are just not going to read all that. So, which I'll show you in a second, I have a separate section where the actual question is listed. But what I want to focus on is this. So they have their due date. Now you notice everything I do in my course, I put EST, Eastern Standard Time. And this is because not everybody is in Eastern Standard Time, particularly in the COVID climate. And I ran into this problem a few years ago, well, maybe more like 7 years ago, when I had a student who, it was in the summer, who had gone back to Winnipeg. And she kept submitting stuff, whatever the time, an hour late. And I kept going back to her and saying, why is this an hour late? You keep submitting stuff late. And then she explained, I'm in Winnipeg. And I realized, well, that's why. It's a different time zone. Now that we're in COVID, I personally think you need to specify what time zone you're talking about. Some people put Toronto time, but I just go with EST. And I always go with 11:59 p.m. I never put midnight. Don't ever put midnight, because people don't understand what midnight means. Oh, no, let me phrase that. Don't ever put 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. because they don't understand the difference versus noon and midnight. So many students think if you put 12 a.m., they think it's noon. And 12 a.m. is not noon. 12 p.m. is noon. So you want to avoid that hassle. 11:59 p.m. is the way to go. The more important thing, though, is this. So this is the due date for their original submission. There is also, I got to change that bold, but there's also a student reply component, which is due a few days later. Typically, I have like 2 or 3 days. So they have to go back after they've done their discussion board upload. They have to go back and read through their fellow students' submissions, and as I'll show you in the rubric in a second, and reply in a constructive fashion. So by giving this sort of 48 to 72 hour window, they're able to have the time to go back and start looking at their fellow students. Now, in case you're wondering, some of you might be thinking, well, hang on, what if someone submits their posting at, say, noon, and then someone else goes and submits it at 7 p.m., that second person, couldn't they have gone through and read everybody else's postings and basically copy their material? No, not if you set the settings up. So I'll just show you really quickly how that works. When you create your forum, if you scroll down, you can do the various options. This is the key right there. Participants must create a thread in order to view other threads in this forum. If the student does not first create the thread, the answer, they cannot see what everybody else has submitted. So if you have a general question or a very specific question, let's say, what is the symbolism of the ticking clock in Story of an Hour? Is there a ticking clock? Oh, whatever. You got the idea. That's not really a great question because it's going to be all over Google and ask.com, whatever. But if that's the specific question you're expecting everybody to answer, each individual has to submit their answer before they can see everybody else's. If you click this particular section here. Otherwise, you can choose all the things that are relevant for you. I never do file attachments for discussion board because the idea is they're supposed to be discussing and conversing with one another publicly for the students, that is. And if you allow file attachments, that defeats the entire purpose of a discussion board. So take the file attachments off in my humble opinion. Otherwise, you can choose the things here that are relevant for you. But the key here is make sure you click this button to ensure that students are not reading other people's and basically, swiping their ideas. Okay. So, right. So this is the general area. The questions themselves I set up for this folder over here, discussion board questions. And I tell them over here, that's where they're going to find the discussion board question. So I'll just show it quickly to you because I know I'm running out of time. There's the discussion board question. It's mandatory. I have it as a Word file. The dates all match, right? So I reinforce the dates. And I won't go through the whole question. So here are the instructions, basically, right? Et cetera, et cetera. There's the deadlines, et cetera. Information on word length. There's the section on student responses. I give them reminders. And if anybody wants like to see this, like if they want it, just send, I guess, me or Mary or somebody an email. I can send this to you. This is like not proprietary stuff. But this is where they learn what it is they're supposed to do. Here's the rubric I use. So here's my grading. Again, I can send this to you. I won't go through it. I can send this to you if you're interested. But critical thinking and argumentation gets the most points, times 4. So if they get a perfect 5 times 4, that's 20 points. Organizational and structural content, like paragraph organization, use of quotes, etc. It's slightly less than the critical thinking, but it's 3. Documentation is worth the least because I want them obviously to cite their material, but I especially want the critical thinking. It's not the same value. And then the student replies is worth 10 marks in total. And here's the breakdown. So again, so it comes up to 50 in total. So you can certainly inquire about getting that, and I can send it to you. And then I skipped over this folder right here. These are discussion board examples that I have collected from previous students with their permission. And if students are saying, well, I don't know what you're expecting from a discussion board submission, then I have it here. So these are student submissions, so students can actually see. Now, again, this is a degree level course, so typically we're talking about 700 words minimum. And then I provide a commentary as per the rubric, so students can see how I graded that previous submission. And I'll just give them 2 or 3 examples. Because I have this separate folder, where did I lose it? It's down here somewhere. There it is. Because I have this separate folder, I'm able to put this stuff in there. And that's basically how I use discussion board. It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, I turned my mic off. That's why I got quiet. I was just flagging for people
right.
that your course is an LSO, and so I didn't want them to get scared.
Right. Yeah. It's a degree level. So you have to adjust your expectations depending on whatever, obviously a discussion board for an LSO is very, very, very different from the discussion board for a gen ed versus like an ELI course, etc. So that's, bear that in mind.
Yeah. Melanie asked what percent value your discussion board, each individual one is. You said 15% overall. So what would one of them be worth?
Well, if they only do the one, it's the full 15%. Again, it's a degree level, right? I keep pushing that. So yeah, so because they have the 2 discussion boards, the mandatory one could be worth the full 15% if they like the grade they get. And it's important to reinforce it in case you didn't figure it out. They do get their grade back before the second one is due, right? So yeah, if a student gets 80% on discussion board number 1, then they're likely not going to do discussion board number 2, versus a student who gets 60% on discussion board number 1 is likely to want to do the second one. But yeah, Mary, I just saw your post. Yeah, you can do lower stakes weekly sessions, weekly discussion boards. It's entirely how you structure the course. And being a degree level LSO, and this is an upper level on top of it. So it's a little bit different than, as I say, a gen ed. But yeah, that's how I do it.
So I mentioned right before we started anything, one of the things I'd like to do as a follow-up at some point is just have single item sessions. So for example, have a whole session on discussion boards where lots of people share how they use and what they do with discussion boards, so that we can get this sense too. Because I've learned a couple of things, even though I don't teach an upper level degree course, there are some things that you do that I would love to try. And I think that's what we need to look at too, is lots of different discussion boards. But here we're just getting started. So I love that. Thank you, Graham. I love that you gave us a window into your course.
Great. You're quite welcome.